everybody, it is Dean Z, and this is a follow-on to our last episode, more mini app reads. So to catch you up in case you didn't watch the last one, I went through a whole big pile of applications of people who applied in September, so very early, whose scores were at or above our medians, who got denied. I went through a bunch of them, and I looked for the examples of people whose mistakes were such that are common kinds of errors that I thought could be useful for people, because obviously these are not the only people who made these errors, and also these are things that are very remediable. So if your problem is that you, have no work experience at all, and you have a resume with one line in it or something, that is something that the only way to remedy that is to go out and get more work experience. But these are all people who are like decent in terms of their substance in every way, but they take the elements of the application that are thoroughly in their control and they flub it, right? So don't make these mistakes. Okay, so moving on, starting with this one. This one, the point is I'm going to be focusing on the essays and the resume, but I do have to take a minute to talk about this person and their insane LSAT decision. They took the LSAT and got a 180, which is a pretty good score. The top score you can get. What did they do? They took it again. Why? I don't know. They just thought, like, if I have a double 180, I have to get in. They got a 178 the second time. Would have been hilarious if they'd gotten like a 150, but no, they got a 178. And they have above a 4.0 at a good school. So I know all of you who think it's all about the numbers would think, like, of course we are admitting this person. But we are not. Okay, I did say that this was all, that the way these applicants that I'm going to be talking about had made their mistakes, that it was all sort of the stuff within their control. And that is largely true. But I will also say this person is pretty underemployed, like has not had a ton of work experience. They had a school year internship for a financial services kind of company, so that's pretty good. They spent a summer in a big box store as a stalker, but it was in a particularly beautiful location, which I want to say, I feel like if I could go back and be 19-year-old Sarah, I'd do that. I'd just like go to the Jersey Shore or something and have some crazy job and then try to spend every afternoon on the beach, because I wish I'd done more of that in my youth. But anyway, so I had no judgment on that, but that's really, like, there's not a lot there. And currently also working as an LSAT tutor, which may explain his insane decision to retake that LSAT when he got a perfect score already. The substance isn't great, but then I also feel like he must be leaving stuff off because he doesn't talk at all about anything he did in college. Maybe he didn't do anything. Maybe that's how he got that 4.0, that he never joined a single club or did a single activity with anybody else. But if he did, they are not listed, so that's not great. And then he lists some interests. He lists 2 languages and says that he is a novice in them, so I would say don't list those because you don't really speak those. And then, I have this bias against people whose interests are very general, and he lists politics, reading, and philosophy as his interests, which I don't even know what to do with that. Like, really? All of philosophy? All of it. So if philosophy is indeed your interest, you should focus on some area of philosophy. If reading is your interest, you should tell me something about what it is you like to read. If politics are your interest, again, tell me something about the type of politics. Like, is it all politics for all time? Or do you mean current day politics? Or are you interested in 19th century French politics or something like that? So, the substance isn't the greatest, but he didn't make the most of it nonetheless. And then the essay, this is another low effort app here. The essay, there's just one essay. No, sorry, my mistake. There are two essays. But the first one is describing an academic extracurricular activity he did during study abroad. He does not, as I mentioned, list any other extracurriculars. So I'm not quite clear on, maybe this was not extracurricular, maybe it was a curriculum, maybe it was a class he took. It's not clear, but it's just so boring. It's like 2 pages talking in detail about like this academic project. I mean, calling it an extracurricular makes it sound like potentially interesting, but it really isn't. It's like it's equivalent to saying like, I read this book in class and here's a summary of the book. Like, oh my God, this is so boring. It tells me nothing whatsoever about the applicant, and I could not stand reading it. It was extremely in the weeds for the topic, and yeah, so not great. And then he has an optional essay. I guess it's a half page. It is not one of our 10 optional essay topics that we let you choose. It was his own topic about his identity, and it was half a page. And it's not telling me anything useful. So, wow, he definitely thought his 180 and 4.0 was going to do the whole job for him. But that's not how it worked out. At least not at Michigan. I'm sure he's somewhere fine. But, okay, next. This person graduated in 2024, so we would expect to see some work experience and some, perhaps more interesting essays, because, maybe something in those 2 years interesting to say, but we do not get that. So this person, again, no extracurriculars listed from college, does talk about several awards. Again, some of them are obvious, like, outstanding senior in my major award. Okay, I get what that is. But then there's another one that's like just the name of an alum award. Like, I don't know what that is. So not making the most of it. And then this is the part that really got me. I actually went and did research on this to talk about it and I couldn't figure it out. So he describes himself as a full-time homeschool teacher. The company, he says he works for a company doing this, which seems strange if you're doing homeschooling. And the company is like an industry, like think financial services. And it happens to be the industry that one of his parents is in. So it would be like saying, this is not what it says, but it would be like saying employer, American Express, job, homeschool teacher. It's like, what's happening? I don't get this. What is happening? And nowhere is it explained. We got 3 bullet points. I don't get it at all. And it sounds like he is working with a single student. So not like a family. Like it's one student, which makes it sound more like tutoring than being an actual teacher. So I got some issues with that. The other jobs that this person has had involve working as a lifeguard at a country club and coaching a sport. That's that. Okay. And then, interestingly, mentions in the interest section that he likes. One of the interests is babysitting, and then mentions that he has a large number of siblings. So that makes me wonder, like, maybe the homeschooling is actually a sibling, and that would explain why the employer is like his parents' possible employer. I don't know, but that's just like, that, I've spent so much time talking about it. I should not have to spend so much time thinking about like a job, like just to figure out what the heck you're doing and actually never getting to the bottom of what are you doing. So that's a real failure. And then the personal statement is very weak. he focuses on, he does have a theme, so that's like some of the other people we've talked about are jumping all over the place. This one has a theme, but it is an odd one. It's about power. He starts off acknowledging that, power can be taken negatively, like might make people have a negative reaction, that word. But oh my gosh, power. He talks about his experiences with having power. And it is from when he coaches the sport. He says the students listen to his every word. So that was power. And then he moves to when he was working at the country club, and another lifeguard asked him a question that he thought was obvious, and he realized he had power again. He said, I hold sway over others' lives because people ask for guidance from me. And then he says, as an attorney, I will use my power for good. So he gives two examples of times when he used power and then says, I'll be a great attorney. Yikes, right? I mean, I will say I didn't pick for this anybody who wrote stuff that makes me think they're very, that it's really nutty, right? Because that's just, I don't mean to make fun. It's that's not interesting, really, because most people are not nutty that way. We get nutty essays. This is not one. It's just one where it's I can tell he thought this was really telling something interesting and important, because law is about power, which it is, but it was very poorly executed. And then he had an essay about something semi-traumatizing that happened in his youth, where his family had moved to a new neighborhood, and then there was a crime committed at a neighbor's house, and it really obsessed him, which I can see, at a certain age, that you might really find that, as a kid, you might be really, that would get your attention. But I feel like it's not usually a great idea to describe yourself as a child in these essays, because again, people get sort of very sentimental about themselves, and it's very usually high-flown language about their childhood and describing themselves, when they're delicate and young, and I just don't enjoy those essays, generally speaking. It's very, it just lends itself to a lot of drama that is not really occasioned by the topic. And then I will also note that he uses the word aforementioned, which you should just excise from your writing. So, okay. I didn't get in. Did I talk? Maybe I didn't say anything about his numbers. I'll just say 172 and 4.0 if I didn't already say that. So, again, good numbers. You can just assume good numbers for all these people. Okay, last one for today. We have another perfect LSAT. This guy only took it once, so that's nice. And also a perfect GPA. And graduated 2 years ago. So, just looking at that top line, it's this should be somebody who's going to impress me. But he does not. So, what does he do wrong? So he, again, because he's been out 2 years, he actually presumably has some interesting work experience, but he worked for I'm going to say another, an insurance company, I think is the best way to describe this. But that's the first thing he has on work experience is this insurance company, but it is a job that he ended about a year before he applied. And so you're thinking, so here's someone who we don't know what they are doing now. And then he lists 2 more jobs, very similar sorts of jobs. So you can see, okay, so he has an interest in this. Insurance combines well with law. This could be interesting. But what is he doing now? And then you get down to the very bottom of the resume, and it says service and hospitality work. And there you can see that he is currently working as a server. Which is fine, but it is it's really hard to see. And I feel like the we move fast when we're reading these essays. So you make things as easy for us to see as possible, right? And do things in chronological order because that's how we're expecting to see it. So I will say my readers both noted they did see it, but it was hidden. So, and again, someone who didn't list any extracurriculars or any interests or anything. So it's just these jobs, one of which he no longer has. And so then in his personal statement, he couldn't, I think, decide what to write about. So he starts, it's all over the place. And I may say, one of the frustrating things about this is the writing technically is actually very good. He's a good writer. Like, I enjoyed reading his writing. It's just that it was completely fractured, the theme. And so he starts out with his experience of shadowing a lawyer, and then moves to a description of the full-time office job that he's no longer doing. And he mentions that he's no longer doing it, but gives no explanation for why. And so he's just talking about like the good experience of this job that he had for 4 months, and he doesn't say why he left it, and then moves right away to talking about an experience he had in high school related to his identity that has nothing to do with anything he's talked about thus far, and winds up with talking about his current service position. What? I don't know. I mean, it's like, I just don't know what, again, the point of it is, and it's really hard to follow. And then he makes, I feel really guilty for what I'm about to say, in case anyone's interested. He has an optional essay that goes on at length about his Dungeons and Dragons experience and is making the case about how being a dungeon master is going to make him a great lawyer, which I think, and the reason I feel guilty is because I have 2 relatives who are super into D&D, and I do not have any bias against D&D. I really don't. But you have to recognize that if you're taking a game and you're trying to make the analogy like this game is like my performance in this game is part of why I think I will be a good lawyer, you have to recognize that there's like a certain absurdity in talking about a game. And as long as I think as you're self-aware about that and are like, okay, just bear with me here, I think it could be really good. But it's so serious, and clearly the writer here does not see anything that's a little silly about making an analogy between this game and being a lawyer, and so strikes me as having a lack of perspective. So this 180 perfect GPA didn't get in. Okay, I hope those are some useful examples. So let's sum up. Your resume is important. Tell me what you're doing. Do it in chronological order. Tell me your interests. Make sure you put extracurricular activities in there. This is an educational experience that you're hoping to become part of. So tell me who you were during your educational experience. Explain things, but don't go overboard. Some things are obvious. You don't need 5 bullet points to tell me about being a lifeguard or whatever. Okay, so then the essays, just have a point. Don't have 5 points. If you have more than 1 point, make sure the 2 points are connected and that you're doing a good job of connecting them, and put a little effort into it, right? So if you have a single essay that's a page and a half that is not good and you do nothing else, that's that, right? So, but if you maybe wrote another essay or even 2 other essays, maybe one of those would have redeemed you and been more interesting. So put some effort in, and yeah, good luck out there. I hope that's helpful. And now for the grammar, I will take an example from one of these essays of a boo-boo in the essay, where someone is talking about his last LSAT score, and he calls it not his latter score, L-A-T-T-E-R, which means your last score. He says it's his latter score with 2 D's, which is a totally different word. Does not apply here. So if you're talking about former, before, and latter, later, The word is ladder with 2 T's, not 2 D's. So don't make that mistake. Not a big deal in this essay or anything, but, he clearly, spell check's not going to pick that up, and it just shows a sort of fundamental misunderstanding of what you're saying. So get that right. All right. And that is all I have for today. I am grateful, as always, for your watching. Please send us your questions below or in the comments. Below in the comments, or send us an email, law.jd.admissions@umich.edu, and please put vlog in the subject line. As always, thanks to Dustin, and wherever you go, go blue.